The cargo bay doors hissed open, and Rachel stepped onto the metal floor of Gateway Station with her son David's hand in hers. Behind them, Bruno trotted along, his tail wagging as he took in all the strange new smells. The dog's claws clicked against the floor, and immediately several alien heads turned to stare. A tall, scaled creature approached them. Its skin was deep green, and its eyes were yellow with vertical slits. This was Carl, one of the station's regular traders. He looked down at Bruno with what might have been confusion on his reptilian face. "What is that creature?" Carl asked, pointing at the dog. "This is Bruno. He's our dog," Rachel explained, adjusting the bag on her shoulder. "He's a pet. A companion animal." Carl's head tilted to one side. "A companion? What function does it serve?" "He doesn't serve a function. He's family," David said, looking up at the tall alien. The boy was only 8 years old, but he spoke with confidence. "He's my best friend." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You brought a useless animal to a trade station? How very human." Before Rachel could respond, a security officer approached. This one was even stranger looking than Carl. Dren was an insectoid creature with multiple arms and large compound eyes. His exoskeleton gleamed under the station lights as he checked a datapad. "You need to register that creature," Dren said, his voice clicking and buzzing. "All animals must be logged with station security." "Of course," Rachel said politely. "He's harmless. Just a pet." Dren's eyes focused on Bruno, who sat down and scratched behind his ear with his hind leg. "What threat level should I assign?" "0, Rachel said. "He's completely safe. Dogs are domestic animals. They live with humans." The security officer entered something into his pad. "Species keeps non-functional animals, noted. Keep it controlled." As they walked through the station, more aliens stared at Bruno. Some pointed. Others made sounds that might have been laughter. A group of small furry creatures chattered among themselves, clearly gossiping about the strange humans and their odd pet. Rachel had rented a small quarters in the human section of the station. It wasn't much, just 3 rooms with basic furniture, but it would do while she conducted her trading business. David immediately ran to the window to look out at the stars, and Bruno followed him, pressing his nose against the transparent surface. "Look, Bruno, you can see 3 different suns from here," David said excitedly. The dog's tail wagged, and he licked the boy's face, making David giggle. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. Rachel would go to the trading halls to meet with merchants from different worlds. David would attend the station's learning center, where children of various species studied together, and Bruno would follow David everywhere like a furry shadow. In the learning center, the other children were fascinated by Bruno. A small blue-skinned child reached out to pet him, and Bruno's tail wagged faster. "He's so soft," the child said in wonder. "But what does he do?" "He keeps me company," David explained. "When I'm sad, he makes me feel better. When I'm happy, he's happy too. That's what dogs do." An older child covered in orange fur laughed. "Your humans keep animals just for emotions?" "That's so wasteful," David frowned. "It's not wasteful. It's love." The alien children didn't seem to understand, and David didn't push it. He just hugged Bruno, and the dog leaned into him. One evening, Rachel met Carl at one of the station's dining areas. The reptilian trader had become something of a regular contact, even if he found human customs strange. "Your offspring and the creature are always together," Carl observed, watching David and Bruno play in a nearby open space. "This is normal for humans?" "Very normal," Rachel said. "Dogs have been with humans for thousands of years. They were wolves once, wild predators. But we domesticated them. We made them part of our families. Predators?" Carl looked at Bruno again, more carefully this time. "That small creature?" "His ancestors were," Rachel said. "But don't worry. Dogs are gentle. They're bred to be friendly and loyal." Carl made that laughing sound again. "You took predators and made them soft. Only humans would do something so strange." A merchant at a nearby table overheard them and called out, "The human brought her useless pet. Does it do tricks?" The merchant, a thick-bodied creature with too many arms, laughed at his own joke. Bruno's ears perked up and he looked toward the merchant. A low sound came from the dog's throat, almost too quiet to hear. "Bruno, no," David said softly, touching the dog's head. Immediately, Bruno relaxed and licked the boy's hand. The merchant laughed harder. "So fierce." "I'm terrified." Rachel ignored him. She had learned that many aliens didn't understand the concept of pets. To them, animals were tools or food, nothing more. The idea of keeping an animal purely for companionship seemed foolish. But that night, as David slept in his bed with Bruno curled up beside him, Rachel watched them through the doorway. The dog's breathing matched the boy's, rising and falling in perfect rhythm. One of Bruno's paws rested on David's arm, protective even in sleep. These aliens didn't understand, Rachel thought. They didn't know what it meant to have a dog, to have that kind of loyalty and love. They saw Bruno as useless, as a burden, as a joke. They had no idea what a dog really was. They had no idea what a dog could become when the ones they loved were threatened. But they would learn soon enough. David walked through the market section of Gateway Station with Bruno at his side. The boy didn't need a leash. Bruno never wandered far, always staying within a few steps of David. When David stopped to look at something, Bruno stopped. When David moved, Bruno moved. It was as natural as breathing. A vendor selling glowing crystals watched them pass. Strange, the vendor muttered to his neighbor. The small human controls the creature without technology. How? Humans claim it is training, the neighbor replied, arranging his merchandise. But I think it is something else. Something we don't have words for. Carl found David sitting in one of the station's observation lounges. The boy was doing his homework on a data pad, while Bruno lay at his feet, head resting on his paws. The dog's eyes followed every person who walked by, alert and watchful. Greetings, young human, Carl said, settling into a seat nearby. His long tail curved around him. You are studying? Math, David said, making a face. It's boring. Mathematics is the language of the universe, Carl said. But I did not come to lecture. He gestured toward Bruno. I came to understand. Why do you keep this animal? David looked up from his pad, surprised by the question. What do you mean? He serves no purpose, Carl said, not unkindly. He does not hunt food for you. He does not build or repair things. He does not defend you, as he has no weapons or armor. Yet you feed him, care for him, bring him everywhere. Why? David thought for a moment, then reached down to scratch Bruno's ears. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. He's my best friend. He makes me happy. When I'm scared, he stays with me. When I'm sad, he knows and he tries to make it better. He loves me and I love him. That's enough. Carl's eyes narrowed. Love, this is the human emotion, yes? The strong attachment? Yeah, David said simply. And the creature feels this too? Of course he does, watch. David stood up and walked to the other side of the lounge. Immediately Bruno stood and followed, positioning himself between David and the door. He always stays close. He always protects me, even when there's no danger. That's what dogs do. They're loyal, Carl observed this carefully. Loyal, this means faithful? Devoted? Exactly, David said, sitting back down. Bruno settled at his feet again, but now the dog was facing the door, watching it. My mom says dogs and humans have been together for 15,000 years. That's longer than we've had cities or farms or anything. Dogs are part of us and we're part of them. 15,000 years, Carl repeated slowly. That is a very long time for a partnership. Later that day, Rachel was negotiating with a merchant over a shipment of medicine when Bruno suddenly stood up and growled. The sound was deep and threatening, completely different from his usual friendly demeanor. Every person in the trading hall turned to look. A large alien had entered, one of the Krovan species. They were known as aggressive traders, always pushing for better deals, sometimes through intimidation. This one was tall, covered in reddish fur, with sharp teeth visible when he spoke. Human, the Krovan said, spotting Rachel. I hear you have medical supplies. I do, Rachel said carefully. But I'm currently in negotiations. Negotiations can change, the Krovan said, moving closer. He loomed over Rachel, using his size to intimidate her. Bruno's growl grew louder. The dog moved between Rachel and the Krovan, teeth bared, hackles raised. He looked completely different now, more wolf than pet. The Krovan laughed. The little pet has courage. Too bad it's small and weak. Bruno, easy, Rachel said quietly. Instantly, the dog stopped growling, but he didn't move from his protective position. My answer is no. I'm keeping my current deal. The Krovan stared at her for a long moment. Then at Bruno. Your pet is protective, cute, but useless in a real fight. He turned and walked away. Dren, the security officer, had watched the entire exchange. He approached Rachel after the Krovan left. Your animal showed aggression. He showed protection, Rachel corrected. There's a difference. Bruno would never attack without cause, but he will defend his family. Family, Dren repeated as if testing the word. You consider the animal family? Yes, Rachel said firmly. That's exactly what he is. That evening, David had a nightmare. He woke up crying, scared of monsters from his dreams. Within seconds, before Rachel could even get out of bed, Bruno was there. The dog climbed onto David's bed, pressing his warm body against the boy, licking his face gently. It's okay, Bruno, David whispered, hugging the dog tight. It was just a dream. Bruno's tail wagged slowly and he made a soft whining sound as if to say he understood. He stayed on the bed, keeping watch while David fell back asleep. Rachel stood in the doorway watching. This was what the aliens didn't understand. It wasn't about function or purpose or usefulness. It was about connection. It was about a bond so deep that words couldn't fully explain it. The next day, Carl visited their quarters. He had brought a gift, a toy for David from his home world. As they sat together drinking tea, Carl watched Bruno carefully. I have been thinking about what you said, Carl told David, about love and loyalty. On my world, we have animals we use for work. We feed them because they are useful, but we do not love them. We do not consider them family. That's sad, David said honestly. Perhaps, Carl agreed, but it is efficient. Emotions can be complicated. Bruno suddenly stood up and walked to the door, ears perked forward. 5 seconds later, the door chime rang. It was a delivery person with a package for Rachel. How did he know? Carl asked, amazed. Your door has no sound before the chime. Dogs have better hearing than humans, David explained. And better smell, too. He knows things before we do. Carl watched Bruno return to David's side. Watched how the dog checked on the boy constantly. How he positioned himself to watch both the door and the window. How he reacted to every sound and movement. This was not a useless pet. This was something else entirely. Something Carl was beginning to understand even if he couldn't fully explain it. Your species is strange, Carl finally said, but perhaps not foolish. This bond you share, it is real. I see it now, David smiled. Thanks for understanding. But understanding was just the beginning. Soon, very soon, everyone on the station would see exactly what a dog could do when the family they loved was in danger. The power flickered 3 times before it went out completely. Gateway Station plunged into darkness for exactly 4 seconds before the emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. Alarms should have sounded immediately, but they didn't. Someone had disabled them. Rachel was 3 sections away in the trading district when it happened. She looked up from her negotiations, immediately worried. I need to get back to my quarters, she told the merchant. The power will return soon, the merchant said dismissively. These things happen. But Rachel's instincts told her something was wrong. She grabbed her bag and started moving quickly through the corridors, heading back to where David was supposed to be doing his homework. In their quarters, David sat at the small table working on his assignments. Bruno lay under the table as usual, but when the lights went out, the dog stood up immediately. His ears were forward, his body tense. A low growl rumbled in his chest. What's wrong, boy? David asked, setting down his pad. He reached down to touch Bruno's head, but the dog moved away, walking toward the door. The growl grew louder. Then David heard it too. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy ones, moving fast. The door to their quarters slid open without anyone pressing the entry button. 3 figures stood in the doorway, backlit by the emergency lights. They were Kroven, the aggressive species known for raiding and kidnapping. Each one was tall and muscular, covered in thick fur. They carried weapons, though they were holstered for now. Well, the lead Kroven said, his voice rough and mean. A human child, alone, perfect. David backed away from the table, his heart pounding. Get out. You're not supposed to be here, the Kroven laughed. Security is busy with other problems right now. We made sure of that. Your people are new to the galaxy, human. Do you know what that means? It means you're valuable. Your family will pay good money to get you back. Bruno stepped between David and the Kroven. The dog's lips pulled back, showing all his teeth. The growl coming from him was deep and continuous, a warning that any predator would understand. The second Kroven pointed at Bruno and laughed. Oh no, the pet is angry. I'm so scared. Move the animal aside, the leader said, stepping into the quarters. We don't have much time. Don't touch him, David said, his voice shaking but firm. Don't touch my dog, or what? The third Kroven moved forward quickly. raising his boot to kick Bruno out of the way. Stupid animal. Bruno moved faster than any of them expected. One moment he was standing still, the next he was airborne. His jaws clamped onto the Crovin's leg right above the boot, and there was a terrible crunching sound. The Crovin screamed and fell backward, crashing into the corridor wall. What the? The leader reached for his weapon, but Bruno was already moving again. The dog released the first Crovin and launched himself at the leader's arm. Teeth designed to crack bones sank deep into flesh. The weapon clattered to the floor and the Crovin howled in pain and shock. "Shoot it! Shoot it!" the leader screamed to his companion. The second Crovin pulled his weapon, trying to aim at the fast-moving dog. But Bruno was low to the ground, moving in patterns that seemed almost tactical. He darted left, then right, then straight forward. The Crovin fired twice, missing both times. The shots burned holes in the wall. Bruno hit the second Crovin low, going for the legs. The alien fell hard and Bruno was on him instantly, jaws finding the throat. There was a horrible tearing sound, and the Crovin's screams turned to wet gurgles, then stopped. David had overturned the table and crouched behind it, exactly as his mother had taught him in emergency drills. He could hear everything but couldn't see most of it. The sounds were terrible, growling, screaming, the thud of bodies hitting walls and floor. The leader managed to get to his feet, holding his mangled arm. "Retreat! Retreat!" he shouted to the first Crovin, who was still conscious and trying to crawl away. "That thing is insane." Bruno stood over the dead Crovin, blood covering his muzzle and chest. His eyes, usually soft and friendly, were wild now. Ancient instincts had taken over, the wolf that lived inside every dog. When the leader tried to move toward the door, Bruno charged again. This time the Crovin was ready. He kicked hard, catching Bruno in the ribs. The dog yelped but didn't stop. He twisted in midair and clamped onto the Crovin's leg, bringing him down. They rolled together, a mass of fur and violence. The first Crovin managed to reach the corridor, leaving a trail of blood. He pulled himself along the floor, whimpering in pain and fear. "Help!" he called weakly. "Help!" Inside the quarters, Bruno and the leader fought viciously. The Crovin was bigger and stronger, but Bruno was faster, and driven by something the alien couldn't understand. This wasn't territory or food. This was protection. This was family. This was 15,000 years of evolution and partnership screaming in the dog's blood. Protect the pack. Protect the child. Protect what matters. The leader finally managed to throw Bruno off and stumbled toward the door. His face was torn, his arms shredded, blood pouring from multiple wounds. "Monster!" he gasped. "That's not a pet, it's a monster." He fell into the corridor and started crawling after his companion, leaving Bruno standing in the doorway. The dog was panting hard, blood dripping from his mouth. Some of it was his own from the kick to his ribs, but most of it wasn't. Bruno stood there for a moment, making sure the threats were really leaving. Then he turned back to the quarters and walked to the overturned table. He lowered his head and looked underneath. "Bruno?" David's voice was small and scared. The dog's tail wagged once, weakly. All the wildness faded from his eyes, replaced by concern. He whined softly and licked David's face, checking him for injuries. "Good boy," David whispered, throwing his arms around the bloody dog. "Good boy, Bruno, you saved me." Outside in the corridor, emergency lights flickered. Security alarms finally began to sound. Running footsteps approached from multiple directions. Voices shouted in different languages, but inside the quarters a boy held his dog, and the dog held perfectly still, letting the child feel safe again. One Crovin lay dead on the floor. Another would never walk properly again. The third would have scars for the rest of his life, and everyone on Gateway Station was about to learn a lesson about Earth animals that they would never forget. Dogs were not useless pets, they were warriors sleeping in soft fur, waiting for the moment when their family needed them most. That moment had come, and Bruno had answered the call. Dran arrived first, his multiple arms holding different security tools as he rushed through the door. What he saw made him stop completely. His compound eyes took in the scene piece by piece. The overturned furniture, the scorch marks from weapons, fire, the blood pooled on the floor, the body of the Crovin lying motionless, and in the corner a small human child holding a dog covered in blood. "Status," Dren said into his communicator, his voice carefully controlled. "We have one dead Crovin in the human quarters. 2 more injured in the corridor. The threat has been neutralized." "Neutralized by who?" the voice on the other end asked. Did the mother return? Dren looked at Bruno, who was still pressed against David, watching the door with alert eyes. Negative. The pet neutralized the threat. There was a long pause. Repeat that. The human's companion animal killed one attacker and injured two others. I am looking at the scene now. It is accurate. More security officers arrived, creating a crowd at the doorway. They all stared at Bruno with new eyes. The dog didn't move from David's side, but his body remained tense, ready to react if anyone came too close to the boy. Nobody enters, Dren commanded. The animal is protective. We wait for the mother. Rachel pushed through the crowd less than a minute later, breathing hard from running. David, where's my son? Mom. David's voice broke, and he started crying. The fear he had been holding back finally came out. Let her through, Dren ordered, and the officers parted. Rachel ran to her son and dropped to her knees beside him, pulling him into a tight hug. Bruno's tail wagged once, and his body finally relaxed. The threat assessment changed. The pack leader was here now. Everything was okay. Are you hurt? Rachel asked, checking David all over for injuries. Did they touch you? No, David said through his tears. Bruno stopped them. He fought them, Mom. He was so brave. Rachel looked at Bruno, really looked at him. The dog was covered in blood, breathing heavily, clearly injured. But his tail kept wagging, and when she reached out to touch him, he licked her hand gently. Good boy, Rachel whispered, her own voice shaking. Such a good boy. Medical teams arrived with stretchers for the injured Croven. One team tried to enter to check on David, but Bruno growled low in his throat, making them stop. Bruno, friend, Rachel said firmly, using the command she had taught him. Friend. The dog's ears relaxed slightly and he allowed the medics to approach. They scanned David quickly, confirming he was physically unharmed, just scared. Then one medic looked at Bruno. The animal is injured, the medic said. Broken rib, possibly two. Lacerations. He needs treatment. Can you do it here? Rachel asked. He won't leave David right now. The medic nodded and carefully began treating Bruno's wounds. The dog winced but didn't move away. He kept his eyes on David the whole time, making sure the boy was safe. Carl appeared in the doorway, his scaled face showing shock. He pushed through the other observers and stared at the scene. The body was being removed now, carried on a stretcher and covered with a sheet. Bloodstains marked where it had fallen. The small animal did this? Carl asked Dren. See for yourself, Dren said, pulling up security footage on his pad. I have reviewed the recordings. The footage showed everything. Bruno's explosive speed, his tactical movements, the way he protected David while fighting three armed attackers. It showed the precise way he targeted vulnerable areas, the relentless aggression, the complete transformation from gentle pet to lethal fighter. Carl watched in silence. When it finished, he looked at Bruno with something like awe. I called him useless. I laughed at the humans for keeping him. We all did, Dren admitted. We were wrong. More aliens crowded around to watch the footage. Word was spreading through the station fast. The harmless pet had killed a Croven raider. People who had mocked Bruno days earlier now watched the video in stunned silence. A station administrator arrived, an elderly alien from a species known for their wisdom and fairness. She looked at the scene, then at Rachel. I need your statement. What happened here? Rachel, still holding David, explained everything she knew. The power outage, the disabled alarms, the Croven raiders who had targeted her son for ransom. Bruno did exactly what he was meant to do, she finished. He protected his family. The animal killed a sentient being, the administrator said carefully. This must be investigated. That sentient being broke into our home with weapons and tried to kidnap my child, Rachel said, her voice hard now. Bruno defended David. That's not murder. That's protection. That's justifiable force. The administrator nodded slowly. I agree. But the Croven clan may not see it that way. They may demand compensation for their dead. They can demand whatever they want, Rachel said. My son is alive because of Bruno. I won't apologize for that, and I won't let anyone punish him for doing what dogs have done for thousands of years. Carl stepped forward. I witnessed the aftermath. I have seen the recordings. The animal only defended. He did not pursue the fleeing attackers. He did not continue violence beyond what was necessary. He showed restraint even in combat. This is remarkable. Other witnesses began to speak up, aliens who had been in nearby sections and had heard the commotion. All of them supported Rachel's account. The administrator made notes on her pad. The investigation will be thorough, but preliminary assessment suggests justified defense. The animal will not be removed from your care pending final ruling. Thank you, Rachel said quietly. As the crowd began to disperse, Carl stayed behind. He approached slowly, careful not to startle Bruno. Young David, he said gently. Your friend is very brave. David, still shaky, managed a small smile. He's the best dog in the whole galaxy. I believe you are correct, Carl said. He looked at Rachel. I owe you an apology. I did not understand what your people meant by companion animals. I thought dogs were useless creatures you kept out of sentiment. And now? Rachel asked. Now I understand, Carl said. You do not keep pets. You keep guardians. You keep warriors who love you. This is something we do not have on my world. Perhaps we are the ones who are lacking, not you. Bruno's tail wagged weakly at the gentle tone in Carl's voice. The dog was exhausted, injured, and emotionally drained, but he was still alert, still watching over David. That night, after everyone left and the quarters were cleaned, David slept in his mother's bed with Bruno between them. The dog's breathing was labored from his broken ribs, but he refused to leave the boy's side. Rachel stayed awake for a long time, one hand on her son, one hand on Bruno. She thought about what could have happened if Bruno hadn't been there. She thought about all the times aliens had mocked her for bringing a pet to the station. They weren't mocking anymore. By morning, everyone on Gateway Station had heard the story. In the dining areas, markets, and work sections, beings from dozens of species gathered in small groups to discuss what had happened. Data pads were passed around showing the security footage. Some watched it once, others replayed it multiple times, trying to understand what they had witnessed. In a corner of the main marketplace, 3 traders from different worlds stood together, watching the footage again. Look at the speed, one of them said, pointing at the screen. The animal moves faster than the Krovan could track. How is that possible for such a small creature? The bite force, another added. Our analysis shows it can exert over 200 kilograms of pressure per square centimeter. That is more than most predators twice its size. The third trader shook his head slowly. But it is not just physical. Watch how it fights. It has strategy. It targets the legs to bring them down, then goes for vital areas. It is not random violence. It is tactical. Across the station in the security office, Dren was giving a briefing to his team. Multiple officers stood around a holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional recreation of the fight. We need to revise our threat assessment protocols, Dren said. We classified Earth dogs as harmless based on their behavior. This was a serious error. But they are harmless, one officer protested. I have seen this animal many times. It wags its tail. It plays with the human child. It shows no aggression. Exactly, Dren said. They are harmless until their family is threatened. Then they become something else entirely. We need to understand this difference. He pulled up biological data on the display. Dogs descended from wolves, apex predators on Earth. Humans domesticated them over 15,000 years, but the predator instincts remain. They are simply controlled. Controlled by what? The officer asked. By love, Dren said simply. By their bond with humans. This is what we failed to understand. In the medical bay, the injured Krovan was recovering slowly. His leg had been badly damaged, and the doctor said he might never walk normally again. When questioned by investigators, he was still shaking. It was not natural, he kept saying. Animals do not fight like that. It had no fear, no hesitation. It just attacked. You broke into its home and threatened its family, the investigator pointed out. What did you expect? I expected a pet, the Krovan shouted. Everyone said it was just a pet. Harmless, useless, nobody warned us it was a trained killer. It is not trained, the investigator said, checking his notes. It has no combat training at all. This was pure instinct. The Krovan stared at him in disbelief. That is worse. That means all Earth dogs are like this. Apparently so, the investigator agreed. Carl visited Rachel's quarters that afternoon, bringing gifts. He had a healing crystal for David, said to help with emotional trauma, and a specialized bandage material for Bruno's injuries. Rachel invited him in, grateful for the kindness. David was doing better today, playing quietly with his toys while Bruno rested on a soft bed Rachel had made for him. The dog's ribs were wrapped and he moved carefully, but his tail still wagged when Carl entered. I have been researching your species, Carl said, settling into a chair. Specifically your relationship with dogs. It is fascinating. What did you learn? Rachel asked, serving him tea. That dogs were not always like this, Carl said. You humans found wolves, dangerous pack predators, and over thousands of years you changed them. You bred them to be loyal to humans instead of to their own pack. You made them part of your families. We didn't just change them, Rachel said. They changed us too. Dogs helped us hunt. They helped us guard our homes. They helped us survive. The relationship made both species stronger. But you bred out their aggression, yes? Carl asked. You made them gentle? We bred them to be selective with their aggression, Rachel corrected. A good dog is gentle with its family and fierce with threats. That's what makes them perfect guardians. They know the difference between friend and enemy. Carl looked at Bruno, who was watching him with calm, friendly eyes. Nothing in the dog's demeanor suggested he was capable of killing. How does he know? How does Bruno decide who is a threat? He reads body language, tone of voice, our reactions, Rachel explained. Dogs are incredibly good at understanding humans. They have evolved to read our emotions, our intentions. Bruno knew those Krovan were dangerous because of how they acted, how they spoke, how they moved. And he knew David was scared. Remarkable, Carl said softly. On my world, we have never bonded with animals like this. We use them, but we do not love them. We do not make them family. You could, David said, looking up from his toys. It's not too late. Carl smiled, an expression that looked strange on his reptilian face but was genuine. Perhaps you are right, young one. That evening, a gathering was held in one of the station's public forums. Species representatives came to discuss the incident and its implications. Rachel was asked to attend and explain Earth dogs to the assembly. She brought Bruno with her, and many in the audience visibly tensed when the dog entered. Rachel stood at the podium with Bruno sitting calmly beside her. I understand many of you are confused or frightened by what happened, she began. So I want to explain what dogs are and what they mean to humanity. She told them the history, going back thousands of years to when humans and wolves first began their partnership. She explained how dogs had been bred for different purposes: herding, hunting, guarding, rescue work, and companionship. She showed images of dogs throughout human history, from ancient cave paintings to modern photographs. Dogs are not weapons, Rachel said firmly. They are family members who will fight to protect their pack. What Bruno did was not violence for the sake of violence. It was protection. It was love expressed in the only way he could at that moment. An audience member stood up, a small furred creature from a cautious species. But how do we know these animals will not attack us? How can we feel safe around them? The same way you feel safe around any being capable of violence, Rachel answered. By respecting them and not threatening what they protect. Bruno has walked through this station dozens of times. He has met hundreds of beings. He has never shown aggression to anyone except those 3 raiders. Why? Because nobody else tried to hurt his family. Another voice called out. The Krovan clan is demanding compensation. They say you owe them for the death of their member. Rachel's expression hardened. They broke into my home with weapons to kidnap my child. They fired weapons in my quarters. They tried to hurt my son. If they want compensation, they should compensate me for the trauma they caused my family. Dren stood up from the security section. Station security supports the human. Our investigation shows clear self-defense. The dog showed remarkable restraint, actually. He could have pursued and killed the other 2 attackers, but chose not to once they retreated. That shows judgment, not mindless violence. Carl stood as well. I have known this family for days. I have seen the animal in many situations. He is gentle and kind until his family is threatened. This is exactly what a guardian should be. We should not punish Earth dogs for being what they were meant to be. The forum continued for another hour, with various species weighing in. By the end, a consensus emerged. Dogs would be reclassified on the station. They were no longer listed as pets but as bonded guardians. Any being who threatened a human family with a dog would be considered to be taking their life in their hands. As Rachel left with David and Bruno, beings who had previously ignored or mocked them now nodded respectfully. Some even bowed slightly to Bruno, recognizing the warrior that slept in his furry body. Word spread beyond Gateway Station too. Other trade stations and colonies heard the story. Human traders began reporting different treatment. Aliens who had dismissed them as weak now showed respect. The revelation that humans kept predators as beloved family members changed how many species viewed humanity. Humans were not weak or sentimental. They were a species who had taken wolves, one of Earth's most dangerous predators, and made them into loyal companions through 15,000 years of partnership. That changed everything. 3 days after the incident, a Krovan ship docked at Gateway Station. The clan leader came aboard with 6 guards, all of them armed. They demanded an immediate hearing before the station council. Rachel was summoned, and she came with David and Bruno. The dog walked beside them, his injuries healing well, showing no fear of the Krovan who stared at him with hatred and fear. The council chamber was full. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, all wanting to witness this confrontation. The Krovan clan leader was massive, even larger than the raiders had been, with scars covering his face and arms. He pointed at Bruno with one clawed finger. "That creature killed my nephew," the clan leader growled. "Human law or not, blood requires blood. I demand compensation. 1 million credits or the animal's life." The chamber went silent. Everyone looked at Rachel, waiting to see how she would respond. She stood up slowly, one hand resting on Bruno's head. The dog sat calmly, looking at the Krovan without aggression, but without fear either. "Your nephew broke into my home with 2 accomplices," Rachel said, her voice steady. "They disabled station security. They brought weapons. They entered my quarters without permission. They threatened my 8-year-old son. They tried to kidnap him for ransom. Bruno did what any guardian would do. He protected his family. It is an animal," the clan leader spat. "Animals do not have rights to kill sentience." "By that logic, your nephew and his friends had no right to threaten a child," Dren said, standing up from the security section. "And they were armed, which Bruno was not. They initiated violence, not the dog." The Krovan clan leader's eyes narrowed. "My nephew is dead. Someone must pay." Carl stood up now, his tall form commanding attention. "I would like to speak if the council permits." When the council chair nodded, Carl continued. "I have spent much time with this family. I have observed the dog called Bruno extensively. He is gentle and kind unless his family is threatened. Your nephew created the situation that led to his death." The dog simply responded. "You defend an animal over your own kind?" the Krovan leader demanded. "We are both sentient beings. That thing is just a beast." "That thing," Carl said carefully, "is a member of a species that has lived alongside humans for 15,000 years. That thing has saved human lives countless times throughout history. That thing is bred and trained to protect. Your nephew threatened what Bruno was meant to protect. The outcome was inevitable." A small voice spoke up. "May I say something?" Everyone turned to see David standing up, looking tiny next to all the adult aliens. Rachel started to stop him, but David was already speaking. "Bruno is my best friend. When those Krovan came, I was so scared. I thought they were going to take me away from my mom. But Bruno protected me. He could have run away, but he didn't. He stayed and fought even though they were bigger and had weapons. That's what dogs do. They protect their families even when it is dangerous." The Krovan leader looked at David with something that might have been discomfort. "You are a child. You do not understand." "I understand that your nephew tried to kidnap me," David said, his voice stronger now. "I understand that he kicked Bruno and hurt him. I understand that if Bruno hadn't been there, I would be gone now and my mom would be crying. So no, you can't have Bruno's life. You can't have any money either. Your nephew was wrong and Bruno was right." The council chamber erupted in conversation. Beings turned to their neighbors, debating and discussing. The council chair called for order, and slowly the noise died down. "The council will deliberate," the chair announced. "We will review all evidence and testimony. A ruling will be made by tomorrow." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay awake worrying about what the council might decide. Beside her bed, Bruno slept peacefully. occasionally twitching in his dreams. David was in his own bed now, recovered enough to sleep alone, though Bruno had been reluctant to leave his side. The next morning, the council chamber filled again. Rachel stood with Bruno waiting for the decision. The council chair rose and addressed the room. This council has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and recordings of the incident. The chair began. We have also consulted legal experts from 17 different species regarding self-defense laws and the rights of companion animals. Our ruling is unanimous. The chamber went completely silent. The dog designated as Bruno acted in legitimate defense of a family member. The Krovan raiders initiated the violence. They were armed and attempting kidnapping. Bruno's response, while lethal, was proportional to the threat. Therefore, no charges will be filed against Bruno or his family. Furthermore, the Krovan clan's demand for compensation is denied. They owe no debt. The Krovan clan leader stood up, fury on his face. This is an outrage. You put an animal above sentient beings. No, the council chair said firmly. We put lawful self-defense above criminal actions. Your nephew chose his path. He suffered the consequences. This council will not reward criminal behavior with compensation. Case closed. The Krovan leader stormed out with his guards. The chamber erupted in applause, much of it directed at Rachel and Bruno. Many beings came forward to congratulate them and to meet Bruno personally. The dog accepted the attention with his typical good nature, tail wagging, letting anyone who wanted to pet him. Carl approached with a wrapped package. This is for Bruno, he said, handing it to Rachel. A gift from my world. Rachel unwrapped it to find a beautiful collar made of flexible armor material. It was lightweight but strong, designed to protect Bruno's neck and chest without restricting his movement. Carl, this is too much. It is not enough, Carl said seriously. Bruno protected your family. Let this protect him. Besides, I have already received orders for 3 dozen more. Other species want to acquire dogs now. They finally understand what you humans have known for thousands of years. What's that? David asked. That the bond between human and dog is something special, Carl said. Something powerful. Something that makes both species stronger together than they could ever be apart. Over the following weeks, everything changed on Gateway Station. More humans arrived with their dogs, and now the aliens treated the dogs with respect. Children from various species would ask to pet the dogs, and their parents allowed it, recognizing that these animals were gentle with those who showed kindness. Rachel's trading business improved dramatically. Species that had dismissed her before now sought her out, wanting to do business with someone who commanded such loyalty from a living guardian. Other humans at the station reported similar experiences. One day, Carl arrived with surprising news. My government has approved an exchange program, he said. We want to learn about dogs. Perhaps some of them could live on my world with families who would care for them properly. Dogs aren't commodities to trade, Rachel said carefully. They're family members. But if families on your world truly want to bond with dogs, truly want to love them and care for them, then yes, I think that could work. David was in the station's learning center when one of his classmates, the small blue-skinned child, approached him nervously. David, could I meet Bruno again? My parents said I could ask. Of course, David said, smiling. He'll like that. They walked together to the observation lounge where Bruno was waiting with Rachel. The blue child approached slowly, respectfully. Hello, Bruno, the child said softly. Bruno's tail wagged, and he walked over to sniff the child's hand. Then he sat down and allowed himself to be petted. The blue child's face lit up with joy. He's wonderful, the child said. I wish I had a friend like him. Maybe someday you will, David said. There are lots of dogs on Earth who need families. That evening, Rachel stood at the observation window watching the stars with Bruno beside her. She thought about how much had changed in such a short time. They had come to this station as outsiders, humans in a galaxy that didn't fully understand them. Bruno had been dismissed as a useless pet, a burden, something to laugh at. Now beings from across the galaxy wanted to understand the bond between humans and dogs. They wanted to experience that loyalty, that love, that partnership, all because Bruno had shown them what dogs really were when it mattered most. David joined them at the window, putting his arms around Bruno's neck. I love you, boy, he whispered. Bruno's tail wagged and he licked David's face, making the boy giggle. No words were needed. The bond said everything. Carl found them there and stood beside them, looking out at the stars. You know, he said thoughtfully. I used to think my species was advanced because we had excellent technology and efficient systems, but watching you three, I realized we were missing something important. What's that? Rachel asked. The understanding that love is not a weakness, Carl said. That loyalty is not inefficient. That protecting what you care about, even at risk to yourself, is not foolish. It is the highest form of strength. You humans knew this. You built it into your partnership with dogs. Perhaps that is why you will go far in this galaxy. Rachel smiled. We're just doing what humans and dogs have always done, taking care of each other. Yes, Carl agreed, and now the galaxy knows. They said Bruno was just a pet. Now they understand he is a warrior, a guardian, and most importantly, family. That changes everything. Outside the window, ships came and went from Gateway Station, carrying beings from 1,000 worlds. And somewhere on most of those worlds now, stories were being told about Earth dogs, about loyalty and courage, about the strange humans who had made predators into beloved companions. The galaxy was learning, and Bruno, sleeping peacefully between David and Rachel, had taught them the first and most important lesson. Never underestimate the power of love, and never threaten those who are protected by it. Because when you do, you will discover that the gentle family pet is also a warrior, and that 15,000 years of partnership has created something unique in the galaxy. A bond that cannot be broken. A love that will defend to the death. A friendship between species that makes both stronger. That was what dogs meant to humanity. And now finally the galaxy understood.